Hey everyone, it's James here at Fast Lane Innovations. Today I want to take a minute and go over how to use this version of the app. We've pretty much totally overhauled it, brand new user interface and a lot of things to make it really easy to use hopefully. And it should be pretty straightforward, but I thought I'd go through, there might be some nuances that are easy to miss. So we'll just dive right in here and go through how to use the app. So the first page here, just a safety warning. Please read it and follow it and be safe driving. Don't focus your attention on shift lights or on the app. Pay attention to your driving and let the shift light be a peripheral vision tool. Click acknowledge and that'll go away. Then we have the screen here. If this is the first time you've used the app and you've never connected obviously to a shift light, if you make a selection down here, it'll just set itself up to match what kind of shift light you're going to be pairing it with later. So we'll start with sequential, and I'll talk about multi-stage later on too. Alright, this is the main screen. It's where all the action happens. And most of the controls are launched from here. So across the top we've got the help button and the connect button and a Bluetooth status indicator. If we clicked on connect here, it'll attempt to connect to Bluetooth. Now this is just a simulator on my computer, so that way you can see the screen more easily without my fingers obstructing everything. I can use a mouse pointer, and so it just has the simulated RPM sine wave looking thing going on. And there's a bit of a glitchy behavior when we go into settings that you're going to see. The app doesn't do that. The app's pretty smooth. But when I'm in settings, you'll see it's not ideal. So let's go ahead and click on the green question mark. Here's just a help screen. It's got some basic information about the app, a link to the company website, and some information about the device you've connected to. So you got your model number, serial number, and device firmware. It can be very helpful if you have an issue to try to debug what's going on. We also got some helpful links here. A link to a PDF of instructions similar to what you should have received with the shift light. A link to videos, instructional videos such as this one, and another video on how to set your pulses per revolution. So the shift light will be able to give you the correct RPM based on the type of signal it's getting from your ignition system. Won't talk about that in this video really at all. So go to that video and figure out how to set that up. And if you have any problems setting that up, be sure to send us an email. Click on support here. That'll send an email. We'll get back to you as quickly as possible and help you out with your problem. But you also might want to check the knowledge base. And so as we get questions and we come up with answers, try to put them all in there so that you have a handy reference. You don't need to wait for someone to respond to an email. Maybe hopefully your issue is just right there. Hopefully you don't have an issue, and if it is, it's right in the knowledge base. You can solve it very quickly. All right, so moving down, we have the RPM numerical display here. Let's see what your RPM currently is. And then we have the little icon here of what the shift light is doing at this particular moment. Should match up to what your physical light's doing. It's a handy reference if you're just watching the app, I guess. And then while this chart's going on, we see it's all kind of busy. Maybe we want to just capture what's going on and start it over. Just hit the little refresh looking arrow. It'll start it all over. And you'll notice the RPM chart actually, once it gets to a certain amount of time, I don't know if it's 20 or 30 seconds, then it'll start to scroll over. So you don't have the super crowded, if this was on for 5 minutes, you wouldn't be able to see anything. It would just be this zigzaggy mess of lines. So here it goes, it's starting to scroll. Then we have the settings gear button here. And this is where we can set up everything real easily. We have the different lighting modes for the sequential shift lights. And you can select what you like there. You got left to right, you got center out. There's different variations of that. I kind of like the, let's see, I like this one. And then brightness is right below that, the slider here. I would recommend starting pretty low brightness, maybe like a third of the way. Because the lights do get pretty bright, especially if you're setting up at night, maybe even a little lower. The lights are very bright at night. The next row down here is a way to store the RPM related settings. So the different shift points and some of the other settings, RPM related settings, all covered down below. You can save it to a file that you pick here by clicking the plus button. Here's the glitchy behavior I mentioned. On the app, it won't kick you out of the settings, so I apologize for that. You click the plus button, and then you can put in a name. Maybe you want to have different settings for different tracks or different cars, whatever the case. And you can have a bunch of those if you want and have all different shift light settings. And then maybe you're at that particular track that day, you just select it, and it'll reconfigure everything for you. And then you can rename it, you can delete it. I can add more. I won't go into that. But all of these settings here, we see the little gray circle with the eye in it. That will bring up all the information about what to do there, what it is. Click the X. And then we have the 4 different levels. We can set the shift light to 4 different lighting levels. So in this case, we're going to go 2 greens and 4 greens, 6 yellows, and then everything red. So we can change those to whatever RPM we want, or you can turn them off. If you only want to have the red, the 4th level, for example, we could turn off all of those levels. I won't do it with this twitchy behavior, but you could turn off everything but that level. You could also, maybe you want to have 4 greens and all reds. You can turn off the middle levels. So you just have, here we would just have the 4 greens and the 8 reds come on. Level 4 basically tells it what to do when it hits this top level here, or I should say the bottom level, the maximum RPM level that you set. It's always going to be red, but you can have it just do the same as the other lights as far as brightness goes, just transition to all red, or you can have it flash when it gets to that point. So it'll be the same brightness, but the red lights will flash quickly to get your attention a little bit better. Or if you don't like flashing, you can just have it, instead of flashing, it'll just come on with a full brightness, which is really pretty bright. And if you really need it to get your attention, then you can do it flashing at the full brightness. So it'll be, that's going to really get your attention. I think it'll go from, in this case, pretty low brightness to full brightness flashing in your face. So that ought to let you know it's time to shift. And then moving down below that, we've got, I mentioned the pulses per revolution before. I will point out one thing. There's a link here also to get to that pulse per revolution video. Night brightness is going to be a percentage of this brightness you set on the slider that it will dim to if you hook up your instrument lights to the yellow wire on the shift light wiring harness. If it gets energized, if it gets 12 volts on that yellow wire, it's going to dim it in this case by 50%. So this will be the percentage of that slider. So if I had this set to 75, well, I shouldn't do that because it's going to kick me out. If I had that set to 75, then it's going to be 75% as bright as that slider. Light progression is kind of a neat one. So right now the lights go from the center and fill up to the outer part of the shift light. So if you hit the arrow here, it'll reverse, and it'll start at the outer edges and move to the center. And it just reverses the direction for any of the modes. Then we have the RPM demo mode. If I click that when I'm connected to the shift light then will operate in a simulated mode. So you don't have to be connected to your car even at that point. You don't need an RPM input connected, and it'll just go through the same kind of thing we're doing here with an RPM sweep up and down, and you'll be able to see how the lights progress. You can change your settings and do all that, and also it's handy to verify that everything is connecting, because you should see the RPM on the chart on the phone, on your smartphone too. And if you do see all that, then everything is connecting and communicating. Fading levels, that would be kind of a smooth fade as the lights, more and more lights come on, they would fade in, which is neat visually. If you're using it as a visual tachometer, that might be a really nice looking effect. If you're using it to quickly see when something changes though, you're probably not going to want to fade between levels so that your eyes can easily see a transition between colors or whatever's happening there. So I usually leave that off for my use. RPM switch is the optional RPM switch accessory. So it's basically a relay module that can be triggered on and off with the RPM that you set here. And based on how you set those, there's a few different ways it can work. It can work like a window switch, and there's all kinds of information on that in the information pull down. Auto logging is a handy feature. Especially you want to have it set up ahead of time so that you don't have to try to push the screen. Especially if you're wearing racing gloves or something, you might not be able to really push the screen to get it to start logging. So we'll go ahead and set up something for that. 3100 RPM. And I'll show you what that is in a moment. So you can have it just turn on and stay on at 3000, or if I put an off point there, it'll automatically stop logging, after it turns on, and then it goes down below whatever RPM I put in off. Then it will stop. So speaking of logging here, we'll just clean this up. Your data logging controls are at the bottom. So you can manually record by pressing the record button, obviously. And that'll flash to let you know that it's recording. and it's red obviously too. Or I'll wait for it to go back down. I click auto, and once it climbs above that 3100 RPM that we set, now you can see it automatically started recording. And it's going to record, because I didn't set an off RPM, it's going to record until I click auto again, and now it's stopped. And then to view your logs that we just created, click on the logs button, and the app comes with a sample log, so even if you haven't done any logging, you can look in there and see how it works. And then it has the logs that we just created. So if you click the little fly out arrow, we can rename the log if we want to, and we can do other things. We can, the little up arrow here will take any RPM settings that you had associated with this log. So whatever you were running when you ran this log, if you click that button, it's going to upload them all and make them the current settings, uploading shift points, as you can see here. So that's handy if maybe you've done a bunch of test runs and you're like, okay, this log here, this is my best. So we'll just hit that and it'll just set it right back there. The blue the envelope will email a CSV file of all your acceleration or your RPM and acceleration data along with your shift points that you set up. And that way you can analyze it offline in a spreadsheet, or you can import it into a video overlay program as your RPM and acceleration signals to that. And so those, you'd have a video of your driving, you'd have your RPM, acceleration, everything going on, all synchronized together. And it's just a really helpful tool to get your driving and tuned up. And then the red trash can will delete the file. And if you don't want to delete it, just click down here on the undo bar, and then it comes back. So let's take a look at a file. Oh, click on the name. There we go. And here we have the graph of what happened during this particular log. And we could play it back real time as well. Click the playback button. You can see it fills in the RPM in real time, and then the shift light icon matches the settings that you had set when you created this log. In addition, if we click show stats below, the app tries to intelligently figure out when did you shift gears. This gear number isn't necessarily what gear you're in, it's just the number of gear shifts you've had. But it gives you a bunch of statistics about your driving, like what RPM did you actually shift at? You know, you have some response time, and so does the car. How long did it take you to shift gears? And some other information too, including like max G-force during that gear. So that can be really handy to optimize your driving. The share chart button will just take an image of this screen, and you can email it to people, text it, save it to your photo library, whatever you want to do there. If you hit the I button on this screen, it'll bring up the legend for what all the column headings are. You know, they're really short, so it's not a gigantic wide table to scroll through. So this will decode that for you. And then if we exit back out, that's pretty much it for this app. However, give me one moment. I'm going to rotate the screen to landscape mode, and then we'll be able to see the accelerometer the charts as well. So I'll be right back, and we'll talk about that. Okay, I'm back. So I rotated the simulator here to the landscape mode, and now you can see there's more information available. We already talked about the chart, everything going on here. So now I'm just going to focus on the accelerometer, the new stuff in the landscape mode. So this chart here on the right, the bullseye target looking chart, is for accelerometers, and so you got your lateral and forward acceleration available on that. To get that started though, it needs to be able to initialize itself, figure out what orientation your phone is at, and also figure out what direction is forward. So what you'll do is you hit the green arrow, or it's like a cyan blue arrow. And the simulator here won't work super great because it's automatically going to detect the forward motion. But what'll happen is it will, after you click that once, it'll prompt you to accelerate in the forward, you know, make sure your wheels are pointed straight ahead and then accelerate. And then it knows which direction is straightforward for you. So we'll go ahead and click that, and it'll just figure itself out. Now you notice that we have massive acceleration. Apparently, we're going way off the graph here. There's an acceleration number up here on the top right. You can see we're going from 1G to the rear to 1G forward. So if you have like a top fuel dragster, you're probably not going to get by with the 1G scale. And actually, we're not even on a 1G scale. If you look at the chart here, the inner darkest, or the inner brightest ring, I should say, this heavier ring, not the light gray rings, but the heavier, lighter ring is like 3/8 of a G, and then the outer ring is 3/4 of a G. If you hit the little magnifying glass here that has the 1 next to it, that will change that scale. And now we've gone up to 1G and a half G for the little inner ring. So now you see we're just kissing the edge of that chart here. So, most cars are probably going to be at best somewhere around here. And then you can go up to 1.5G if you got a pretty good performance car. And then 2Gs and up to 4Gs. And honestly, I think that road racing is going to max this out more than straight line dragsters, unless maybe you have a top fueler, because you'll have the lateral acceleration and they have so much downforce. Anyway, I digress. If you need to reset it and do it all over again, you just hit the little arrow, and then you have to go through the same sequence of accelerating forward, and it'll reset itself. Oh, look, I forgot about this. There's a 6G. I guess if you're in a fighter jet. Anyhow, on the right you can see the similar logging buttons. There's not really enough room to put a bunch of text here, which is why I covered the portrait mode first. So you would have already seen, the round red or the round gray button is record, and now it's recording. And then the button here is auto record. The little I don't know what to call those arrows there. The two arrows chasing each other around. And then the eyeball or the eye is going to be viewing the logs. Now, when we go to view a log, let's go back there. And there's also more information in the logs, so let's get to the latest one. Well, all the logs have the information, whether or not you collected them in landscape mode. They all have the acceleration information there. So let's see if we play it back. This was not the latest one. 20. Oh, yes, this is the latest one. There we go. So the other ones we didn't initialize the accelerometer, so there's no data for the acceleration there. This log we did initialize it, so here it goes. Now this log, you don't change there's no icon to change the scaling of the chart. That's because it just figures out what's the maximum during the run, and it scales itself so you have a little bit of margin. You can see that it picked 1.5G for the outer ring here, since it was going all the way up to 1G. So that way you don't go off the edge of the chart. And then also the stats, when you show the stats table in landscape mode, you'll be able to see, at least on this phone, you can see all the columns, depending on your screen resolution. But it's a lot easier way to see more of the information in this mode. Okay, so that's the chart, or that's the app in a nutshell. I think I covered just about everything, but again, feel free to send us any questions you have by the email link, and comment on the video if you'd like. You may want to subscribe to see additional updates we'll have. We'll probably post some tips and tricks as time goes on. So you might want to subscribe. Otherwise, good luck and have fun out there. Hope the device helps you win all your races.